Welcome everybody to this week's Thinking Thursday. This particular subject I've been looking to do for a long time, but at least one of my guests has been very, very slow to respond, and I've had to hound him down really until he agreed to participate. The man in question is a very, very well known owner, breeder, bookmaker, punter, you name it. Gary Noble has done it. And I've really wanted to get Gary on this for a long time, and he's been very reluctant, but thankfully he's participating. Welcome, Gary.
Hello.
And
nice to be here.
and our second guest is a man quite familiar. He's been on here when we with some tipping challenges and various bits and pieces. A man known simply as Lofty, Martin Chapman from Star Sports, odds compiler. I'm particularly keen to get Martin on as well because I've see a lot of his stuff on social media, and as a journalist, when someone is prepared to just speak up and not try and sit on a fence, it makes life altogether more interesting. So that's why Lofty's ideal. Gentlemen, I wanted to kick off following a couple of conversations I had with Gary about punting in general. And I get widespread complaints, see it all the time. I'm not a massive punter myself, but people can't get their money on. The huge complaints about how things have evolved during COVID. And Gary, when we were speaking the other day, you were saying that quite a few of the hefty punters that you know have dropped out the game. What do you think that the background to the problem is?
Difficult to pinpoint anything, and we've had discussions amongst ourselves about it, and nobody can actually nail anything. We just feel that it's probably something to do with the industry SP coming in. Obviously, the closure of betting shops during that time with COVID, and subsequently Betfair then kind of almost became a changed thing as well. And I can't really pinpoint it, but it's definitely more difficult now than it's ever been. Only this month, a couple of people that actually, again, this is following last month, a couple of people that kind of use our software system that have made a living all their life, well, not all their life, but ever since they chose to try and make a living at betting, have just said, I've had enough, but I can't carry on. And so that's indicative of what's going on amongst what I would think people that were always capable of winning and turning enough profit to kind of get some kind of living out of it. So, yeah.
One of the observations I've made, as I said, and I don't pretend to be an expert on this, which is why I get you guys in, but it does seem to me that over a period of time we seem to have hemorrhaged a lot of mug punters, and there seems to be an awful lot more, or we've basically been left with the shrewdies. I think we've lost a lot of greyhound enthusiasts in general that have disappeared out of the game. People that would have had a bet just because they enjoyed the dogs. Now we end up with a lot more people associated with kennels. Lofty, is that something that you come across? I mean, you guys, you're part of the system. Do you turn a lot of money away? Why do you turn it away? Is it difficult?
Open races we don't tend to. Obviously we only really price up the opens and stuff like that. We've got no interest in pricing up graded races. You see this, and this is a lot of the problem really, where a lot of the time people, so they can't get bets on, but they want to bet on the graded stuff. Now, everyone's going to be a lot more clued up on the graded stuff. Everyone knocks the likes of Bet365 and Paddy Power and whatever, and probably rightly so. They take their prices out of the Racing Post computer and tinker about with them a little bit, put them up in the morning. It's not difficult, is it, to beat an SP? I mean, let's be honest. I think my wife could probably beat the SPs for a lot of these, dogs and things that come up in the morning. So that sort of stuff, in a way, I think definitely, yeah, they've certainly, and as Gary said, the mug money has certainly dried out of it. And I think that has also gone back to the exchanges. A lot of the money I see on the exchange now, I think, is just robotic. You look at them, if a meeting, say, runs behind schedule with a hair problem, you're looking at the sort of the next race along, and there's as much money matched on the next race along quarter of an hour before it's due to start as what there would be for a normal race. So to me, that's just bots playing their own money against each other and stuff like that. So I think a lot of the money also has been taken out of the exchanges there as well. So that, yeah, is an underlying problem. And for graded races, you know, and grading racing in general, I just think that, yeah, the lack of real sort of enthusiast money. Okay, you still get the odd, we get the odd punters in the afternoon, you just play off the show. That's, you know, that's all good. That's really a good way of earning a steady money from a bookmaking point of view. But from a punter, I can fully understand where people are coming from now, just saying they can't get the money on.
How much of the market, how much of the whole system is, as you say, you're referring to the bots, you know, the money, professionals playing professionals, computers playing computers. How much of that is, how much do you think is dominated by that, and how much is genuine punter money?
Difficult to tell. I mean, you can tell by looking at the exchange some nights. The last race at Romford, say on a Friday night, you can see £100 match sometimes. Whereas you can look, say, at an early afternoon race. We'll just say this morning something maybe at Henlow, you know, on a Monday morning or Tuesday morning, you'll see probably maybe 15-20 grand matched on it. So I mean, there's still probably the enthusiastics money there, and people who still want to play sometime on the better racing, which we tend to sort of go towards.
Yeah, I mean, looking again at something like Bet365, their model seems to be that, again, just my observation, maybe I'm wrong, that they kind of will lay a certain price to a small amount of money. But I did a little bit of research. I read a very interesting article some time ago, which I think would be widespread knowledge to the people in your industry, but the average punter probably wouldn't realise that these companies, they're entirely led by algorithms, and the fact that whereas there would have been a time come where maybe Ben would have said, I'm sorry, we've got to close this guy down because he's a bit too shrewd. Ben's opinion or your opinion wouldn't even come into it now. It would be done automatically by a computer going, no, we're going to reduce him and restrict him. I mean, doesn't that inevitably mean you're just going to be in a business of just skimming?
That is just, I think that is just the general state of bookmaking, full stop, whether it be greyhounds, whether it be football, horse racing, whatever. I think if you beat the system and you beat the algorithms, unfortunately these firms now are run by bean counters and accountants. You know, at the end of the day, they look at their bottom line, which is, you know, the P&L column. And if they see a punter who's going to beat it, yeah, then they're out the door. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. It's something I don't personally do myself, you know, but the bigger firms, as you're saying, you know, really at Star, we're only quite, you know, we're a small fish really in a big pond. I mean, we're a minnow compared to the likes of 365 and the, you know, and Power and Betfair and the likes of that. You know, that's just what we are. But yeah, you can fully understand the big firms looking after their shareholders, their private equity firms who own them or whatever. And yeah, I mean, that's just the way it is. It's just a number to them, isn't it? You know, a punter's just a number, but they still keep the account open. They still see it as an account. You know, I'd still have a 365 account somewhere. Can't get $1 on with them. I mean, doesn't make me clever, because I'm sure, as you know, 1,000 people who watch this thing would have any clue about ground racing and say the same thing. I'm not just singling them out, but you know, that's just the fact of the matter and the way it is.
So surely though, that on that kind of business model, that invariably leads to nothing, doesn't it? Because if you ban all your punters, sooner or later there are no punters, there is no business. I mean, where does this lead?
Well, exactly. That's what we try and find. It's just a vicious circuit of punters trying to get on. I'm sure people have, you know, plenty of third-party accounts, and we see it ourselves. Even, I'm not talking about from a greyhound point of view, but certainly from a racing point of view, we get people who follow markets and follow certain lines and track lines and that, and you know, they'll be restricted by us, of course, and eventually they'll send somebody else in. It doesn't take too long to fathom out that someone's playing the same line in the same market. And, you know, that's just the way it goes. Unfortunately, it's just a case of people trying to run a business, and it just, you know, it skims its way right through, no matter what sport it is. And unfortunately, in this case, also refers to greyhounds.
Yeah. I mean, you both obviously stood there at Walthamstow in the past. I mean, I was going to ask you, Gary, if Walthamstow was still there and bookies were allowed back into the tracks, would it make any difference? I mean, presumably you couldn't make a book now anyway, because of the influence of the exchanges, I guess.
I think if you're on course, it would be nowadays a completely different thing. As Lofty just said, this is there's no personalities involved in bookmaking anymore. There's no personal touch. It's computers, algorithms, of we've just said, and whatever. And that, I think, is the thing that is lacking in the sport, and why we can't generate probably enough money, and the firms can't generate any money, because there's no input other than everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet. For instance, on Oddschecker, they'll, you know, as a ground punter, I'm betting on graded races mainly, and they'll go up. The first firms go up a bit 365 normally. If there's no moves on a race, the others will go within a very small percentage each price of all the dogs. And now you might be looking at 15 different firms, but none of them are actually got their own prices. They've just, you know, jumping on the back of whoever went up first. And if they see a move with 365, again, they haven't laid a bet, but they'll cut it, which then kind of perpetuates a move. And you'll see a lot of false moves in the morning on 365, whether it's by design or whether 365 just overreact or whatever. But there's two things that happen there. Bet 365 definitely drive everything, in my opinion, as regards early prices, particularly on greyhounds. And the second thing is that this kind of misnomer that's currently industry SP. Industry SP sounds like it's put together by the greyhound industry or by the bookmaking industry, but it isn't. It's we all know how it's arrived at, and it's arrived at purely and simply by taking the Betfair SP and putting on what seems to be an accepted overround, which kind of varies between, I don't think it ever goes below 120. I can't see it ever going below that, and I'll explain why in a minute. And it can be as high as 135. Now, what happens is they might return 128, which on face value looks okay, but that 128 is only available literally in the last 30 seconds of the show, because prior to that they'll be looking at Betfair, and they'll be kind of building in safety nets of percentages, which means that the show will be probably 140, 145, and only when, this is my opinion by the way, only when it looks like that Betfair has stabilised the last kind of minute to 30 seconds before the off, will they start pushing prices out to get their percentage down to, as I say, what appears to be a kind of generally acceptable overround. So that part of it, I think, is deceitful. It's a misnomer, and really, you know, you see it. You take Betfair away when Betfair goes down for the odd race or two. Everything's just static. It's purely Betfair driven, and bearing in mind that Paddy Power own Betfair, they've really got all the fingers in all the pies, so they can monitor the early prices, they can monitor any money in shops, and they obviously got some kind of straightforward link to Betfair, but everybody's using it anyway. I mean, that's my view about it. And I think it's, going back to the start of the question, it would be a completely different on-course market to what is kind of going on generally now. It's just be chalk and cheese, and it would be a good thing. But I fear there's obviously never going to be enough attendance at any dog track to justify bookmakers, you know, attending in any great numbers. You might get one or two turn up, and that'll be it. And they won't be able to take a large bet unless they're really strongly opinionated, which one or two of them might well be. But it's no good being strongly opinionated when probably 11 out of 12 race card, you're going to feel kind of peanuts.
Yeah, the couple of things occur to me sort of based on that is that one is that, is there not a market then for someone to undercut? I mean, if you think back to Walthamstow days, the bookies used to bet 112, 114%, didn't they?
Less sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, or less even. I think I've seen about 108. Now, as a layman, and I express a layman because I'm going to end up making myself a complete idiot here, but as a layman, I would have thought there would have been enough margin in there for someone to go, do you know what, I will work to those odds because, you know, can I not just do business and work to a very fine margins, or wouldn't you get the money in? I don't know.
Big
Not enough turnover.
Could. Sorry, couldn't go.
I'm saying, like, not enough turnover, apart from, say, Walthamstow's heyday, or not heyday, but apart from kind of big meetings. If you went down there on a Tuesday night for the first, second, or third race, there's only a handful of punters there, and there's no scope for it. Obviously, I think Lofty was just about to kind of talk about when Starr was standing up there, and there was a lot going on at that stage. But I'll let him say his bit. But generally, I'd say there's potentially not enough turnover for the huge majority of the time.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, like, most of it now would be, I was going to really more allude back to Toaster when we bet there during the Derby. And, you know, I mean, like, and even the first Derby at Nottingham, there was good money about, it wasn't the Toaster standards, but you could have easily, we were betting to sort of about 118 a race, 3% a runner. Now, you could have easily bet probably to 2%, you know, and bet to 112 and take an equal amount of money. We bet at Cheltenham, say on the top rail at Cheltenham, and, you know, we bet next to a lunatic who just wants to go less than 1% a runner, betting them at Cheltenham Festival. Now, it's his money. He can do what he likes with it. But, you know, it's proof there that when there's actual money to be taken, you can still bet to sort of, you know, no margin really, which he bets to. Obviously, he's having money back on the machine and stuff like that, and it is still there. So there's certain nights when it is there, obviously, but most of the time, again, as Gary said, I mean, being an on-course bookmaker now, other than maybe Saturday nights, you could take the sort of the casual money there, and if people want to go along and earn a couple of grand just by taking, you know, betting to 140s and 150s and taking the casual money off the floor, you've got to look at tracks, trying to think someone like Kinsley that has a standalone Saturday night meeting, and you look at their percentages, it's like the flapping days there again, it's like 180s they're betting to, but people having their 2 and 3 quids on, you know, they think great. I mean, they go there during the night, obviously get paid to stand for their bags meetings and stuff like that, and still not a bad way to make a living, but they're paying them. I can't now see people going back to paying bookmakers to stand again at bags meetings like they did before. Obviously, now with the industry SPs, they've got their own little way out of it. I don't agree with them. I'm the first to admit that they're shocking. I mean, you look at them and think, you know, they're absolutely shocking. There's sometimes on a Saturday night when we get the Crayford card through, which obviously doesn't come from SOS. It's a standalone card from RPG TV. So we don't get a feed through from it. So I have to self-trade it. Many a time I'll sit here on a Saturday night. I'm looking at a dog on Betfair, which is like 27 or 30 on Betfair. It's 5 on the industry SP. I'm thinking it can't be that. I'll put 10 up. It makes no difference me putting 10 up as putting 5 up. We don't take the same amount of money, but it just, I look at it and think that just can't be right. You know, this is from a bookmaking point of view. I've got the punter in me as well, obviously, but no, they are really, they're not good. And there should be some way really to see where they're coming from. You know, if it's someone just sat in an office in Milton Keynes, as Gary said, looking at Betfair with the early morning prices up there, what's been laid. Again, as you've said, you've got Paddy Power, who've also got to notice with Power, the minute something's matched at Betfair less, they shorten it. Yeah. There was a race, I think somewhere had obviously pressed the wrong button and laid a dog at like 4-1 as opposed to backing it. That's something ridiculous. Tried to be clever, and they've laid a dog at, say, odds on in a race where there's another odds on shot. They had 2 odds on shots in the race. It was embarrassing. They were betting like 165%. And it's just like the bots followed. It's like, oh no, we got to go odds on. That, you know, that's where we're at sometimes. And you just got to look at it and think it's wrong. But, you know, I mean, that's unfortunately where the industry's got to now with regards to greyhound racing. And it's a shame. I mean, I stand there and I'm not a massive punter. I like my anti-post bets on competition and stuff like that, day-to-day stuff. Might bet the odd on the open, you know, I might lay the odd short price one on the machine, but that's about me from a punting point of view. But I look at the people who play it from a day-to-day business and think, well, you know, where does it go for them?
I mean, looking at it from the outside, it just seems to me that this is a bookmaker created and a bookmaker designed cock-up. And realistically, it's only going to be the bookmakers that are going to be able to get themselves out of this. Otherwise, as I said earlier, nobody's going to want to lay anybody to anything. And you know, I've spoken to people like trying to get like 50 quid on with Bet365, and they've been £3.80 or something. And you think, well, sooner or later, that has to just disappear to nothing. Would you have a solution? Would there be anything that you can think of that could make a difference?
Just trying to bet, but it's just not good.
No, I was going to say, like someone like Star Bookmakers, Lofty, and a few people that might want to put a personal input into it. Yes, you could do something, because what my kind of, you could make it known that you will lay these prices, say to lose £1,000, yeah, for instance, and then you would then be able to cut it. It would automatically cut. So, and you could kind of, bit like Betfair, where you look at Betfair and there's £2,000 to bet. You can bet say 3 to 1. You could do that on a bookmaking site, and a punter would know that that's what's there. Once that's gone, it's gone. If he's first in, he gets it. And you could try and make a book somehow, if there was enough greyhound punters that you got in the first place on your books. It might be a way of doing it, but that's all I can see. I mean, as Lofty said, that the bookmaking firms are just, it isn't bookmaking as kind of in any sense at all. It's accounting and bottom lining, and the people they've got kind of driving these things see an easy way of showing a good bottom line profit. But I don't really think they're taking into consideration that they will eventually, as you said, Floyd, alienate everybody, because it becomes a pointless exercise. So I think that, that's what I would say about that particular thing.
I kind of wonder what would happen if we had, I don't know, two 30-year-old power twins come into the game now and if necessary, use technology. I wonder if there was anything they could do. Because the one thing that they did always, and I know it didn't end particularly well, which may be a story in its own right, but they had an opinion. They were prepared to play. They were prepared to go in there and sort of fight in the middle. Not a million miles from being a punter, were they? In terms of how they run their business. Are we simply now at the mercy of bean counters? Bean counters with computer keyboards. Will there be a way forward that we could see people go, you know what, we've got the resources, we're prepared to play big? Or, as I said, is the market, is there so little extra money? Is there just too much shrewd money around?
Yeah, I think it's too much. Anybody that wants to have a decent bet has got a good reason for it, and whether they're right or wrong, whether it's an opinion, whether it's something else, there's just nobody to kind of counteract that. And so it's just kind of, for a bookmaker, it'd just be, when they got it right, they wouldn't take a bet, and when they got it wrong, they'd get absolutely buried. So it's, there's nobody, as you said, I don't like the term mug punter. I just think kind of, because my dad was a casual punter, I'd say. But
recreational is a nice word to use, isn't it?
Recreational. Yeah.
That's what we use. Recreational.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. But anyway, I've forgotten my train of thread for a second. So if Lofty wants to jump in here.
Was there anything you could add to that?
No, I think that's pretty much spot on there. I mean, as Gary said, you can price a race up. You can do a card in the evening. You could do like 11 races and be right 11 times out of 11 and think, ain't I been clever tonight? You'll get one race wrong and you'll guarantee it's the Alamo. They'll come on to you and you'll go down the podium into one book and think, well, I've been right 11 times out of 11 tonight. I'm going to be right 12 times out of 12. You know full well that one time you're wrong, you'll be wrong in spectacular fashion. And you'll think that whole night's work's been put right down the carsey for one mistake you made, or one time you got it wrong and they've got it right, or you've been wrong, or whatever, So it's what it is. And as we said, there are an awful lot of shrewd greyhound punters about, and there always has been, there always will be. There's also a lot of recreational punters that used to be, they've gone by the wayside now. But for greyhound racing, we've known, I'll go back really with Ben more times. I didn't go to Walthamstow too much with Ben, but there was more shrewdies per square yard at Walthamstow, I think, anywhere else in the country, and I think eventually Ben sort of realised that after going there like a lion, he got a little bit tamed down and was like, I'll just take him in my own little fashion and the way it was. And I think he got the level right eventually of how to play them. But yeah, at the end of the day, the shrewdies always know a little bit more than you, no matter how clever you're trying to elude yourself to be.
I was going to say though, you know, being devil's advocate here, but you know, it takes, if you've got a shrewdy at the sort of the top of the pile, you've got the Derby coming up. You know, everybody's going to be trying their hearts out. If you are as good as they are, can't you take them on? First round of the Derby, first 12 heats. Can you not take them on?
I'll show you our field books, Floyd, from Derby's gone by. I swear to God, Derby. If we could only bet Derby final nights, we'd be laughing. Derby rounds and heats, quarterfinals are the worst. I think last year. No, it was the year before last at Nottingham. Obviously, last year was a bit of a washout. The year before last, Ben rung me up. How did we go to Nottingham last year? I goes, well, on the pitch, I goes, we were winning about 15 grand. I goes, both semi-finalists won. He goes, oh, there's a surprise. Like that, you know, you just don't get results. I don't know what it is with the Derby. It's just you get the odd one, but we tend to find that all throughout the rounds of the Derby, it's a tricky old race on the course itself. You know, we love it, we sponsor it, we get involved with it, but even there, a lot of the form tends to work itself out over the period of time. Everybody's got access to it as well, which is a different thing to, you know, what we're saying, going back about Grady racing and stuff earlier on. And the Derby, final night's great. You know, we love it, and we can take plenty of money and hopefully get a few results usually. We normally get one or two pop up on the finals evenings. But yeah, we give it a fair crack, you know, because there's good money in the ring there, and you can certainly get a few quid on. But yeah, it's hard to win during those early rounds, believe me.